Okay, so we have Tim Taylor here, and I'm an 80s kid, so I secretly love the Tim Toolman reference on the original Tim Toolman mold inspector. So Tim is a mold inspector in Texas. You've been doing this for how long, Tim?
Since 2016, so coming up on 10 years.
Nice. Aging yourself, Tim.
Say that.
So I want to start from the beginning of Tim, not necessarily where you were born. We just heard from Tacoma, Washington.
Yep.
But how did you get into mold inspection? That's not a typical career path of like, hey, little buddy, what do you want to do when you grow up? I want to be a mold inspector.
I want to be a mold assessor.
So tell us a story, Tim.
Sure. So I was in project management, was doing software implementations, healthcare, electronic health record systems.
That has nothing to do with mold inspection.
Right. And so I was doing that. I was managing projects, and I loved that job. And then I got laid off in 2016.
Bastards.
Yeah. So, it was a crushing blow.
God works in mysterious ways.
Yeah, when God closes the door, he opens the window. So I was just sitting there with my dad. We were at a Hall & Oates concert, and we were just sitting in the lawn.
Is that bad that I don't know who that is? Hall & Oates.
Oh, you talk about 80s.
Right?
Yeah. So if I started naming songs or like playing the songs,
you to sing the song.
You would know. Maybe if I sang them, you probably wouldn't know. But if you heard them, you'd be like, oh yeah, that song. It's just hit after hit after hit. Anyway, we're at the show. We're at Austin 360 or Coda, and I'm like, I've always wanted to try my hand at starting my own business. I have no idea what I would want to do. And he's like, well, and he's an integrative physician. So like I was talking
and your dad
to
owns his own practice, right?
Well, he's part of Forum Health now for the last.
But
he started Texas Integrative. Right around 2010.
Don't say the year. No.
No.
The year. You age your dad.
No.
So his dad's Dr. Wally Taylor, a well-known environmental. Not mold, just environmental. That's
so
kind of a strong suit.
His background is ear, nose, and throat, but he always from the beginning. Ear, nose, and throat for 20 plus years, but he always was interested in the environmental side. He was always trying to figure out what is actually making these people sick. So I grew up in the San Luis Valley in Colorado. Big farming community, so we're talking a lot of people.
Speaking of environment,
yeah, and exposure to pesticides and contaminated well water, all of these types of things, heavy metals. So he was always. So
you're toxic, is what you're saying.
Yeah, very very toxic. I mean, you're a flagger for the crop duster, right?
Yeah.
You're getting pesticides sprayed on you. So he was always trying to figure out, well, what is going on here? Why are these people sick? Not just prescribing a pill, doing a surgery. Bill Ray out of Dallas, if you guys have heard of him, was a mentor to him. So he was always interested in the environmental side of things. And then when he moved back down to Austin, so he grew up in Corpus, but when he graduated from UT, moved back down to Corpus, or back down here to Austin, and that's when he made the switch to integrative.
Okay.
So he had been doing that for a few years, and then I get laid off, and I'm like, well, I kind of want to start a business. And he's like, you should really look into this mold stuff, because I'm seeing a ton of people that are sick from mold, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of people out there that can really help with it.
Yeah, your dad was treating mold before I was out of residency.
Yeah, so it was a while, and mold was a newer thing,
Still a newer thing.
Yeah, it's still on the forefront. So, I looked into it. There's a gentleman named Dan Yates. Shout out to Dan. He's an older guy, so he's
whoa. We got to define older if you're going to say older.
Well,
he better be 60 plus.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And even when I started shadowing him, and he's gracious enough to take me under his wing, shadow me. I worked with him for about 2 years, learning the ropes, and at the same time, getting involved with ICI, International Society for Environmentally Acquired Illness.
That's a mouthful.
Yes, ICI is the easier term. So, and just networking. Of course, my dad helping me network with people and learning about the kind of the more advanced mold assessment and mold sampling, and really overall indoor air quality stuff. Right,
and that's what I think more and more people are talking about. It's not just mold. It's what's your air quality. It's no different than what the heck do you eat? What do you drink? Well, hello, what do you breathe? It matters.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people don't even really think about it until they start getting sick.
Yeah.
And even if they do start getting sick, they're thinking it's other things than the air that they're breathing.
Yep.
So, I slowly but surely started learning, the traditional mold inspection stuff, but also the more advanced air quality stuff. So looking at VOCs, volatile organic compounds, which is just chemicals, right? All the chemicals that we have in our houses, paint, glue, cleaning products,
furniture, flame retardants,
everything. It's in everything.
There's a rug that they put downstairs in our lobby. I don't know. You came in through the door, but that rug they put out there, it has to be at least 3 months ago, maybe even 6.
Yeah.
And every time you go in that lobby, I mean, it
obvious. Smells like a discount tire.
Yeah, it literally smells like a burnt rubber.
It's crazy.
For 6 months, I'm like, gladly we don't live in that room, but man.
Yeah, and I'm sure that would make a bunch of your patients sick.
Yeah.
They put that in their bedroom or their living room every time they go in there. So chemicals, particulate, right? So not all particles are mold, but some mold. Obviously, all mold is particles. So whatever it is, we want to measure the particle levels and what's going on. Do you have pets that are shedding all kinds of particles? Do you just need to clean more? Do you need some air filtration? That type of thing. We test for radon. We started using gravity plates now to detect candida and yeast.
Oh, interesting. Wait, what the heck is a gravity plate?
So kind of like what you think of as a petri dish, right?
Okay, yeah.
So the test plates, gravity plates, petri dishes. They're what we call culturable samples. So you leave it out for an hour in whatever area you want to test. You can also like tap it on a couch or something, or a rug or something like that, shirt, and you basically let the mold grow on it, and within I think 7 days the lab will read it and see how many different colonies are forming and what those are.
So we have had a patient before many years ago, I don't know, recently, find candida on one of those plates, but candida is not really, as far as I know, something we talk about as an air quality thing. It's always it's in your bowels. It of course causes yeast infections in women, but it's an airborne thing too.
Sure. So
on moldy bread, or is it a water damage thing?
No, it's not. It's actually from people and pets. So if you have somebody on your end that's having problems with yeast and candida, one of the things that ways that they're exposed to it is through pets and themselves. So people and pets. So
we need to get rid of people and pets.
So yes.
Got it.
Wow.
Complete extermination. Wow. But there are ways that you can, there are body washes that you can use. There are pet shampoos. There's cleaning products that you can use, such as Citrus Safe, so it's a citrus-based product that kills that stuff. And you're treating yourself and you're treating the environment at the same time to basically reduce the exposure. So you can. And also then they would be working with a physician to bring those levels down.
Right.
And then, but if you're being exposed to it all the time, like if your pets are shedding it all over the place, you're going to have a really hard time reducing that. So yeah, we want to detect and there's a lot of these gravity plates where it's just full of candida. And sometimes we don't even really find mold. Like candida will be the biggest problem. So a lot of people don't know about it. A lot of people don't even realize that it's a thing. And also the gravity plates, that's the only way that you can really detect,
as far as the only place I've seen it.
Yeah. So like traditional air samples for mold, ERMI sampling, things like that, those don't test for candida.
Because they don't make spores. Candida doesn't make spores, right? I think they make buds, but I don't think there's not a spore-based organism.
Yeah, and either way, I think they're so small, and it's just not something that the microscopist is going to be looking for. They're looking for mold spores. That's what they're being paid to do. So they're not looking for candida or yeast or bacteria and any of that stuff.
So got into mold inspection, learned the basics from this Dave guy, Dan
Yates.
and learned the advanced techniques. So that was one of my questions, not to cheat too much, but Tim is our number one mold inspector right now, unless he starts misbehaving. Yeah,
don't worry, Tim.
Throw him under that bus.
I'll behave.
Don't worry.
So we have trust issues with other mold inspectors, and short version of the story is we even got let down by our own landlord here, who our windows leaked and we had water damage, and by the lease requirements we were required to use their mold inspector, and they came in and literally have an air sample that was positive, and we're like, yep, no mold here. And so then we had to hire Tim's company to come and like, yeah, you got to do it again and change the opinion. Or not change the opinion, have the correct opinion.
Right.
We didn't tell you to lie. It's just, hey, there's a positive air sample, and that means there's mold. And so then you guys did the same air sample, got the same results, and said there was
gave
mold.
A different opinion.
They came and fixed it. Yeah. And then when they opened, they're like, oh gosh, that was worse than we expected. Like, well, no duh.
Much appreciated, by the way.
Yeah,
that was my office.
That was
You're very welcome.
Thank
You're
you
very welcome.
very much. Feeling better already.
Good. That's what we want.
Yeah.
And so what is it that you did differently? So we've got all kinds of people listening, right? We've got patients mostly listening and potentially other doctors and practitioners. So for other patients that don't live in Austin, in Austin,
Airwell, Texas. So we cover, yes, airwellnow.com is our website.
Airwell Now, no hyphens or anything?
Airwellnow.com, no hyphens.
Okay.
Texas at airwellnow.com is our email address, and our phone number is 512-766-2180.
And if y'all aren't sure, contact us. We've got his contact. So don't feel like, if you're driving, you have to write that down. But okay,
put it in the comments.
Yeah.
So what is it? Because we were just texting at that conference, right? He's got to stay up to date on his mold certification, and I was inviting him. I think it was to this podcast, right?
Sure,
and you're like, oh my god, I'm stuck at this conference. I got to do this for my certification. But not to steal the microphone, but like he was realizing like how much more he's learned than the basics. So. Yeah. What can other people look for in a mold inspector that can't hire you because you can't go to Wisconsin or whatnot? What are some of the requirements someone can look for to find a good mold inspector? What do they look at on the website, or what do they ask? How do they get you in Wisconsin? There, that's the question. How do they get you in Wisconsin?
Gotcha, Wisconsin. So. Yeah,
maybe Wisconsin's not a moldy place.
There's a lot to unpack there for sure.
Start talking. We're listening.
Wisconsin is beautiful, by the way. Just went there for the first time this last summer. In the North Woods, Tomahawk.
Okay.
So beautiful. I just
went there last year.
So, a lot to unpack there. Mold is highly unregulated. I mean, it's not like lead or asbestos where there are these exact levels that thresholds and everything. It's really up to the assessor, and I like to use the term assessor rather than inspector. But
excuse me, I didn't mean to insult.
No worries. And it also kind of refers to our process, which is a lot more than just mold inspector. It's like we're looking at overall indoor air quality. So we assess the whole building, right?
Yeah.
It's unregulated, so it's really just up to the assessor that you use. And you got to look at motivations, right? So traditional mold inspectors, first of all, a lot of people, they're not going to like really continue their education. They're kind of stuck in the mindset that we had like back in the 90s, where it's like mold is like everywhere. It's not that big of a deal. Like it's not really something that's going to make a lot of people sick. So it's like more about identifying just really egregious, obvious things.
Yeah, like bulldoze the house down.
Yeah, or like, oh, look, there's a bunch of black all over that wall. Okay, we have a problem. But if there's like a little bit of mold in the wall, it's like, oh, okay, and I do an air sample in the middle of this room, it's probably going to come back normal. And it's like, oh, well, it's fine.
Right.
So the motivation, too, is the big thing. So like your landlord hires a mold inspector.
First problem.
Their motivation is to tell the mold inspector or the landlord.
Don't find anything.
Yeah, exactly. So whereas we're working for you guys, like we know you guys want to be safe, you want to be well. We're gonna find the mold, and also so traditional versus kind of what we do is a little bit of mold, and this is like one of the first things my dad told me is like, just
Wally helping us out here.
Just in terms of just basic stuff. When I first got into this, he was like, it amazes me how little there has to be to start causing issues. And it's not for everyone. That's the big misconception too. A lot of people can be around some amount of mold and be fine.
Yeah.
But some people are around a little bit of mold and get really sick.
I mean, it's just like stress, right?
Yeah.
You burn an apartment complex down, which recently happened during the freeze. Y'all see that apartment
I
complex
saw
in
that.
Ontario. We saw
In
the
Bee
smoke.
Caves?
Yeah. And I guarantee you there's going to be 100 people outside at 100 different reactions, right?
Yeah.
Everyone reacts to a different stressor. Mold, VOCs, everyone has a different reaction to it. Some of it we get to choose, some of it we don't get to choose.
And it's your genetics. It's if you're a kid or an elderly, how long, how much there is, how long you're exposed to it, all of these different variables. So who am I to determine what amount of mold is going to make you sick?
Right.
So our job is to go in, find the mold. So like if we see even a little bit of water damage, we'll do a wall cavity sample. We'll do whatever sampling we can to just identify, is there any mold, like mold there that shouldn't be there, that's actually growing in the wall, like on the framing, on the paper, on the back of the drywall. If there's any mold there, we don't really care like what the level is necessarily or like what kind it is. We're just trying to find mold. And if we find mold that's not supposed to be there, we're always going to recommend that it be removed. Because like you said, you could open up the wall. I might do a sample and it comes back and it's elevated, but it's not that bad. But then they open up the wall and it's just full of mold. And if I would have tested a couple feet over, it would have been even more. So you just don't know. So we're working for the people that are sick. We're working for your patients. We want to err on the side of caution. So anytime we find mold that's not supposed to be there, it's like address it, open up that wall, with remediation, right? Put up containment. We don't want it to spread all over the place, but open up that wall, pull those cabinets out, and see what's there and get it cleaned up.
I'm gonna have a trauma response if he keeps talking about this. You've done it like 4 times in my house, once in my office. Jeez. Yeah, I can attest. He does all that. Yep.
Sometimes there's a little bit, sometimes there's a lot. It really doesn't matter. It's like our goal is to, especially in somebody's house, is to just reduce the level of mold as much as possible. Are we going to find every last little tiny bit of mold? No. It's hard. It's a really difficult job, finding all these little things, but we find we're really good at it, and my guys are really good at it. They're very thorough. The one of the biggest differences is just a lot of traditional guys and gals will see a little bit of water damage, a little stain on a wall, some bubbling on a baseboard, it's separating from the wall a little bit, and just gloss over it. And for us, it's like, well, that's water damage. What's going on there?
To my example, that's literally what happened. The July 4th floods that killed all those girls on the camp. It had the tiniest little bubble on our windowsill, and I'm a crazy mold doctor. So I got Tim to come by, like, hey, you got to wall sample this. And off the charts. Had no idea. It had been moldy for 10 years, and that was ultimately the mold source that we were looking for in the house.
Right.
And even as good as Tim is, I think I had you over the house 3 times, and we never found that window, and it was moldy the whole time. Until it leaked enough to see it. So the smallest water damage can lead to the source. And if you never look, you never know. I could have easily sold the house and never looked, and no one would have known any different. Because after that rain, it was gone. It was gone. I think by the time your guy came, there was a little evidence of water damage. But a week later, after, luckily, y'all came quickly. Thank you.
Sure. No, absolutely.
Then it was just gone. You couldn't see it, but it was still moldy back there.
Yeah, and absolutely. It's going to be visible evidence, or even just, hey, even if the client's just giving us clues like, hey, I think there's something going on here, or past history, oh, there was a leak in this area. It doesn't have to be visible. I mean, we go off of all, we'll take as many clues as we can. And part of that is the client giving us input of hey, I'm symptomatic in this room or whatever. And so a lot of the time, like let's say a window's leaking, it rains, it leaks a little bit of water gets into that wall, the rain stops, it dries up, you're not going to see anything. And maybe after months or years, you might start to see a little bit of water damage, like on the baseboard, or you pull up the carpet and that tack strip's getting a little bit rusty or whatever. But that can take time. And so, unfortunately, it's like, Do we go into a house and test every single window? Like, no, that it gets really expensive. And there are some ways. So like one of the advanced techniques that we use is ERMI sampling or PCR. So polymerase chain reaction.
We love ERMI.
Yeah. So the way we use it is pretty specific and unique. So that's one of the things that we've developed with Airwell, which shout out to my colleagues in Airwell. We've got Mike Schrantz, JW Biava, and Jeff Bookout. And these are guys that have years and years of experience, some of the top guys in the industry. And we really put together a protocol, especially for ERMI, which we think really is the most accurate and the most valuable. So a lot of people, and a little bit of background on PCR just for people is, this is the same PCR that we use for COVID. Right? It's a DNA-based sampling. So instead of looking for DNA of COVID in your nasal fluid, right, we're gathering dust from your house and we're looking for DNA of certain mold species in that dust and how much of it there is. So it can, and we compare that to the ERMI index that the EPA developed, and also the outdoor reference sample, or we'll take a sample in the crawl space, in the attic, and just compare and try to triangulate. And one of the things that the EPA did is they tested, their results are based on 500 square feet of sampling. So a lot of times people, and so I even used to do this where I would take one ERMI sample for the entire house.
Right, that's what we usually do.
Which it's like, it can give you some good information, but it can also dilute the issue, right? So when you're looking at numbers and you're looking at these like averages of the different molds based on 500 square feet, if you're testing the whole house, you might have, let's say, Stachybotrys in the kitchen. Yep. And so you gather some of that dust up, and then you go and you gather dust from everywhere else, maybe where there's not issues, and it starts to water down those Stachybotrys levels, and then it looks like the Stachybotrys is way lower than it really is in the kitchen. So
I think I'm glad you're saying that, because that's not something we've notoriously thought of in our practice reviewing the ERMIs, but I do think we kind of are already and not realizing it, because basically when we look at the ERMIs, number one, we specifically look at the line item that is Stachybotrys.
Chaetomium.
Yeah, well, we don't even go, you see, that's the mold assessment.
Yeah, that's the other one. I mean, that's like the sister to Stachybotrys is the Chaetomium.
I thought that was the carpet one.
And that's cladosporium?
That's cladosporium.
Cladosporium, yeah.
Maybe the other this is being recorded.
That's good for me.
Well, and there's so many of them, and that's why.
Thank you, Tim. There's so many of them.
And that's why
I'm allowed to make mistakes.
And that's why when people do their own ERMI testing, they have no idea. They'll show it to us and be like, "What does this all mean?" Or they'll post it on Facebook and be like, "Here's my ERMI.
Wow.
What does it mean?" And so
ask the experts.
Right. So we will actually do, 5, 6, 7, 8 ERMIs in a house, split it up into different zones so we get accurate data, and also we can narrow it down and we can actually identify, okay, there's something going on in the kitchen. Or
so that has helped you, because a sample of one, I did that on my house before we found the window leak, and all 4 ERMI samples were basically the same, and they showed terrible mold. And so my assumption was that zoning didn't really work with ERMIs, but maybe it was just that, unfortunately, where that window was the main, like, both story open areas. So my assumption was that that if a mold is big enough and in a common enough area, it was just everywhere, and
it will start to spread around.
But if it's in a bedroom or something and you do 2 bedrooms,
you should see some type of elevation there. Another thing that causes very similar results is if it's in the HVAC.
I was going to ask how that will
kind of evenly spread. So if we see elevations just kind of evenly throughout the zones, we're thinking HVAC, or we're thinking maybe there's just a little bit of something in every room. But what it allows us to do is compare that to our visual assessment and say, okay, well, the kitchen is really high. Oh, but we found all that mold under the sink. We found 2 sources in that zone, so that correlates.
Okay.
Or, hey, like if we go in, let's say, to do a real estate assessment, and we don't find everything right. The seller may have kind of done some handyman work and painted and kind of disguised all the evidence, and we go through and where we visually everything looks pretty good, and then we do the ERMI samples and it's like, oh, the kitchen is elevated. Hey, there may be something going on that we're just not seeing. Buyer beware. So it allows us to get accurate data, kind of separate the building out into zones to zero in on the problem where we should be taking a further look. And it also gives us a good baseline for later on.
Okay, I know Paige has questions, but he just made me think of a question we have to know.
Of course.
And this actually is very good for you to know. So I didn't know. Well, you just mentioned that someone can get a mold inspection on a home when they're trying to buy it. Like, how does that work?
It's tricky.
Yeah, how can the buyer protect themselves from buying a moldy home?
And I should, just on a side note, like that PCR sampling and the ERMI sampling, the way that we do it, it's very expensive. I mean, we're talking like $300 a pop.
Right? Yeah.
And so, but it's worth it. It's like if you really want to know what's going on,
cancer.
When you compare it to the overall value of the home or the value of your health and what you're spending on the medical side, most of the people that you send to us and just people that are dealing with this understand that. Like I saw a Reddit post the other day, and just because I was Googling my company name, and somebody said, oh, I called them and I saw they told me their prices, and I just thought that was ridiculous. And it's like, well, for a lot of people maybe it is, but for somebody that's sick from this or that doesn't want to be sick from this,
have your health,
right? And so unfortunately, and it's a lot of that is just the sample cost, the lab costs, And if
they don't believe you, go look it up. Go to lizbiotech.com and buy an ERMI swab.
Right. And then we're actually interpreting the data so it actually makes sense. You don't just like, here's a bunch of numbers, which is what a lot of the traditional inspectors will do. It's like, so a lot of times they'll just give you the lab data and say, okay, here's your report.
Yeah.
But
so as far as a buyer looking at a home, Paige, what can they do to get an inspection without messing up the homeowner?
We would do the same inspection that we would recommend the same inspection that we do, and you would just have to pay extra depending on your option period to expedite those lab results and expedite our report.
Yeah, that's what I had to do with my house.
Oh, really?
What I recommend for people that are searching for homes, and this is where some good valuable data for people is, you can kind of do your own mold inspections, to an extent.
Okay,
right?
wait, I don't want you to go there yet. Okay, because that's one of my other questions.
Oh,
so pause that. I want you to, before we go back to that, I want you to answer. The homeowner is going to give pushback because they don't want to find mold. They want to sell their home. So, and mold assessment is a legal problem. Like if you find mold, they now have to disclose it. So if you're doing a mold inspection on behalf of the buyer, is the homeowner stuck with that assessment? Like then do they have to go disclose it, or they can say, he wasn't our inspector, that's not our problem?
I don't believe so. I mean, don't quote me on this, but if it's not, if you didn't hire that person, if it's not your day, I think you basically, if like a buyer did an assessment and they sent you that report, oh man, I'm not sure if that would like officially become something that you would have to disclose.
Well,
I wouldn't even want to open it. I would just say like, no, I'm not looking at that.
Yeah. What we were told by our realtor, and then when we presented it to the homeowner, once they were presented with the report, now if we did not close on the house, they had to reveal it to the next.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Sure.
So they were.
It makes sense that the homeowner.
I mean,
would push back.
it's factual. It's documentation.
We didn't tell them we were going to do it,
and that doesn't mean exactly. So that's what I was going to say. Is as a seller, you don't have to do anything. You just have to be honest about what you know.
Exactly.
And so we have a client right now that, God bless them, they're wanting to do all this testing and everything to put their home on the market. And we told them, you don't have to do this.
Exactly.
Right? Like you just have to make sure that, because they're worried about like, we don't want to get in trouble, but it's like you get in trouble because you know stuff and you don't disclose it.
You covered it, yeah.
Right. And so if you don't know, you just have to be honest about what you know and what you don't know.
Yep.
So
okay. So now go back to, that was one of our ultimate questions is we want people to walk away from this podcast. This is your question. Go ahead. Ask it. I got in trouble before the podcast.
Yeah. He said, I don't want this to be the Oubre show. And here we are.
Yeah.
Oubre showing it up.
25 minutes in.
Yeah, I know. Anyways,
29.
Tim, I do actually have a question that would kind of sum all this up, because at least in our experience with some of our patients, they're doing a lot of renting. And so while buying a house, I mean, sure, we can go through all the hoops and everything like that. But when it's like...
Are you asking for a friend right now?
Well, actually, I was asking for my patients, but but yeah, me too.
For everybody.
But like, you're moving from place to place because of school or whatever the reason is, and it's very hard to like see if there's mold in there. So like, what are some tips or some ideas when it comes to like assessing? So what can they be looking for when they go look at those places, or if you have any other ideas?
Absolutely. So, and this goes with the real estate stuff. Like if you're looking for a house to buy or rent, so bring your flashlight, right? Like, first of all, you have to realize that every building has moisture history. Sinks leak, roofs leak, especially the way that we build houses since, the energy crisis.
I like that statement.
Yes.
There's moisture somewhere.
I mean, it's Texas. It's normal. I wish we built houses better. I wish our building practices were such that leaks didn't happen nearly as much, and they flashed windows correctly. To your point, they flashed the chimney correctly. They, all of these things, right? They used better materials that didn't just grow mold right away when they get
drywall behind showers.
Drywall behind a shower. There's paper on the back of all the drywall. That most of the wood that we're using is engineered wood, and so and it's got a bunch of glue in it. It's mold candy. Mold loves that stuff.
Mold candy, I like that.
Yeah. So when it gets wet, it soaks up water.
We're totally stealing that.
It is. I mean, it's because mold feeds on like cellulose, right? The sugars in the wood, and this is all new wood. This is not like old ancient trees that we're using. It's young trees. They're grinded up or whatever. It's like wood chips glued together. Mold loves glue.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Did y'all know that?
Mm-mm.
So particle board, all of our cabinets are built to particle board. It soaks up water like a sponge, and then mold can just grow on it so fast and so easily because it's just perfect mold food.
Mold candy.
Yeah. So I wish that our houses weren't built like that, but you have to realize especially since I would say the late 70s, early 80s is when I think, just from my assessments, when building practices really got, subpar.
That's interesting because we say that all the time. We typically say 80s and 90s are where we notice homes get in trouble, and we usually explain it because of air tightness.
That's one component to it for sure. Like they started making homes tighter, but also they started using all these cheap products.
Mold candy.
So
I like that.
And just the value or the skill levels of the people building the homes have gone down.
Yeah.
And so all of these things lead to, there's going to be moisture history in any house, in any structure, given enough time. Even a brand new house can have issues. I mean, I have a friend that moved into a brand new house, and as they were moving in, the washer leaked. The drain wasn't hooked in correctly, and so it leaked all over the kitchen,
one of our patients, right?
All over the living room. They had to get all new floors and everything. And I'm wondering what made it into the walls. And of course, he's going, well, I don't even want to open that can of worms.
Oh my
You have to. You're gonna get sick if you don't.
Right.
Wow.
So,
because that's the other deceiving part
house.
of mold. We find that, and I'm sure you agree, is that the day of the water leak is not the day that you get sick. You get sick 6 months later, and
exposure
it's like people
over
that
time.
eat gluten, and their reaction is 3 days later. Well, it wasn't the gluten; that was 3 days ago. Like, well, no, it was just your reaction was delayed. So, it takes mold time to grow.
Yeah.
It takes mold time to get inside your body, and significant volumes enoug to make you sick.
Right.
I like to tell people, if you drank a teaspoon of gasoline every day, you probably wouldn't be sick right away, but you'd be sick eventually. Right. So that's the idea behind the mold, is the day of the water leak is not the day you get sick. So it's behind it's
and it's the same for recovery too, right? It's like we're not trying to aim for perfection. I always tell that because people get so just caught up in like everything needs to be perfect, and if there's a little bit of mold somewhere, I'm still gonna. And it's really, I explained to them, it's not about making things perfect and finding every single little bit of mold. It's about finding enough and improving air quality enough to where now the levels of what's making you sick get low enough to like under your threshold.
So you know what helps? We've run into this a lot recently, and what we've come that resonates with patients is your home healthy enough to heal in?
Right.
The lower the mold, the faster you heal. So as long as it's low enough that you are healing, good. That's good enough. Now, if you get it lower, will you heal faster? Possibly, but if that costs you $10,000, is healing a little faster worth it? No. So get it healthy enough to heal in, and as long as you're improving on your health journey, it's healthy enough. And sure, don't buy toxic rugs that smell like rubber.
Right. And those are easy wins.
Don't pour water out on
like
the
get rid of that rug.
Yep.
And
what are some other easy wins like that though, Tim? Like what are the things that you recommend for being in an environment that is
humidity is a huge one.
Yeah.
So like if you're home, if I go in there and I start measuring the humidity and it's in the 60s, 65, 70 degrees, first of all, you can start getting mold growing on surfaces. Second of all, it's just not good air quality. So imagine, humidity is just like vapor in the air, and all of these little particles of mold or whatever, allergens, if it's humid, all of that stuff can just swim around in the air and you're breathing it in. Where
if it's visual,
if it's nice,
mold is swimming in the water.
If you think about it,
all laps in your house.
Any particles, mold, allergens, pet dander, anything is just all, and you're breathing all that in. Well, when it's nice and dry, when you get it down to 45% humidity, there's so much less of that crap in the air. I mean, you can see.
I like that in Texas, you're like, nice and dry at 45%.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah, right.
The Arizonans are like, God, don't you sweat
that's
at 45%?
easy. Yeah.
So
we're using humidifiers here. But if you can see like somebody that has allergens or asthma, if they're somewhere where it's all humid and stuffy, it's like, it's hard for them to breathe.
So Tim, I have a statement.
We have so many questions. I know.
I feel like I didn't answer your question totally, but.
No, you're doing great.
We'll circle back around.
We've got some more. Oh, I think I pressed. You can hear me though.
Oh yeah.
So I have this statement. So I just rented a house. Okay, they sent me.
This is not asking for a friend.
This is legit that they're sending out. So along with the rental agreement, there's a page in there about mold and lead, which I thought was interesting. And there's a statement that says, "Is mold testing necessary? When the moisture is eliminated, the mold will no longer grow and will die."
Oh, wow.
What are your thoughts on that statement?
Miraculous.
Frustrating. I mean, that's completely, that's phooey.
I had to sign this paper. I had to sign this.
And I've heard of mold
Tim
inspections.
Doesn't know what to say about how stupid that is.
It's so bad.
Yeah.
I've heard actual mold inspectors and or remediators people will go into a place that has had some kind of water event and they'll get a moisture meter and they'll scan along, and if it's dry, they're like, it's dry, we're good. Yeah. And it's like, okay, first of all, a leak happens, things get wet. If it's there, if the moisture is there long enough, if things stay wet for 48 hours or so or longer, you get some amount of mold growth. Okay, everything dries out. The mold is still there.
Surviving on humidity.
But even if it's not
the glue, the candy.
Yeah, well, humidity maybe. But even if it's not actively growing anymore, it's still there, right? Like just like a plant that you stop watering, the plant is still there. It doesn't just disappear.
Yeah,
and so if it's a toxic plant that and just like a plant, it starts to dry out, it starts to crumble.
That's a good point.
You drop it on the ground, it shatters into a bunch of little pieces. Well, now those pieces can get into.
You're not watering them and dropping them. Tim, we need to have a talk. Treat your plants better. They have souls too.
There's that corsage and
that we all kept. Yeah,
you drop it on the ground and it just shatters. And all that stuff gets in the air. And as a physician, this. Does the mold have to be alive to affect you? No. But it dries out and it starts to get brittle and starts to fragment in these little tiny pieces. They may or may not have mycotoxins on it. You know, mold produces mycotoxins about half the time. It can be toxic to you either way, depending on your, you know, who you are. And it starts to, that's really when mold starts to get in the air, is after it dries out. Because when mold's got moisture and it's happy and it's just growing, it's not getting into the air as much, right?
Oh, interesting.
So then when it dries out, you may have VOCs, you know, that musty smell. So you may have the chemicals that mold gives off getting into the air, and that's not good either.
Right.
But once mold starts to dry out, it gets brittle, it starts to fragment, and that's really, you talked about, you know, the breathing of a building.
Right.
Well, usually houses are under negative pressure, so air's coming from the outside in, and that stuff that's in the wall is getting pulled into the wall. So, you know, all you need is a pressure differential and an air pathway, and a gap or a crack in the wall.
He says that like everyone knows what that means.
Yeah,
so
cool.
So all you need is a differential and a.
All I gotta do is call Tim. What do you
gap.
mean? Yeah.
So let me explain. So
Please.
air pathways, right? A gap in a wall, like a gap underneath the baseboard. Your outlet, right, is another area. Wherever you have canned lighting or anything, any air pathway,
hole in the wall,
an air pathway, and a crack in a wall the size of a hair, a human hair, can be a freeway for one of these little particles to get through. So it doesn't have to be much. And then pressure differentials, air getting pulled in. You know, if you've got negative pressure on the home, stuff's getting pulled in. Whatever's in the wall is slowly getting pulled into the environment.
And our homes are negative pressure because the air is colder inside than outside?
Well, there's a stack effect. So, you know, the attic gets hot, and the attics are usually vented, so the hot air is being vented out of the attic, and then that's pulling in makeup air from the house, and then which is in turn pulling in air from the outside. So
I thought I knew a lot. I feel real stupid right now. Do y'all feel stupid?
No, well, this is perfect.
No.
This is, you know,
we're gonna have to have Tim again because we got 15 minutes to go.
As soon as they start asking anything medical, it's like, you know, I can help you with the environment, and I wouldn't expect you guys to, you know, answer all these questions, right? But
geez, learning so much. Okay, so homes are so to take that to the next step, he said homes are negative pressure and whatnot. Okay, so that's the current situation for most people's homes,
right?
What should they do about it?
So, well, the first thing obviously is finding any mold and water damage. And so to your point, Paige, like what can they do? So if you're in a rental or if you're looking at a home, you can look, you can bring a flashlight and, you know, look under all the sinks, right? Look up at the air, the air vents, the air AC vents, and see. I mean, a lot of times you just see like mold like on them, right? And so you can rule out a lot of bad places that way. What my point before is, you know, in the building stuff is like really anything. I would say, you know, if you're sensitive to mold, probably you shouldn't be looking at anything, you know, older than 10 years or so.
Yeah,
I would say. No crawl spaces, no basements. Of course, we don't really have to deal with basements here, but
it's called underwater,
right? Yeah, and you go up north, and that's a whole nother thing that they have to deal with. So you're. There's some things that you can kind of do your own mold and at least rule out the obvious stuff, right? The egregious stuff like, oh, I looked under the sink and you could just tell there's been a leak, right? Or if you look under the sink and it's like you can tell that the bottom of the cabinet has been replaced.
You're talking about my home, Tim. It's literally my home.
Right?
He's like, there's water damage here. We're like, I know the garbage disposal leaks. And he goes, no, it was water damage before that. I was like, like, did you turn back time or something? How do you know? Well, the building material is different than the other one. Like, oh, when you say that, it's really obvious.
That's a real telltale. If you are buying a house or looking at an apartment to rent and the bottom of the cabinet is like a new piece of plywood, it's like there's been a leak there. And you could look at the back of the cabinet. There's probably some damage on the back of the cabinet or the sides.
Right.
But so that's some DIY stuff that you can do. And then we'll come in there. And the first thing you want to identify as much of these sources as you can and either have them remediated or if it's just surface stuff, like clean it up. The other thing, you know, lower humidity.
Before you go on and while you're thinking, he said this already, but I want everyone to hear it, is that as a mold assessor, he's not only looking for mold, he's looking for water damage. Where there's water damage, there's mold. Even if you don't see the mold, if there's water damage, there's mold.
Yeah. And people too, like there's this misnomer of like, oh, I need you to come test my house for mold. And it's like, no, you need a visual assessment. You need me to come, you need us to come out there, visually assess. I mean, because if it was just every mold issue was just obvious black mold on the surface, you wouldn't really need us. Right. What we come in is, and a lot of times if it's that, we'll tell you, you don't need to sample. Like that's mold. Let me write you up a protocol, get that remediated. Yeah.
And write me a check for coming here. So
yeah. Well,
don't call me dumb if you can see it.
Well, but we saved you a lot of money in that we didn't sample, because there's a lot of mold inspectors, traditional guys out there. Oh, we need to do all these samples. We need to do samples in every room, and it's like we'll go and we'll our visual assessment costs a lot, but we're going to find stuff. We're not going to sample where we don't need to, but where we find water damage and it's not obvious, that's where we're going to sample, in the wall. We're going to drill a hole and sample in the wall or underneath the cabinet or whatnot. So we want to identify as many of those mold sources as we can, correct those.
I will say that was one of my regrets that I did with Tim was I didn't... Like he looked and he saw what he could, but I almost wish I'd spent more on the initial assessment. Like, let's go ahead and do air samples. If you're not sure, just go ahead and do it. Whereas the problem with my house was we kept finding spots. Like, oh, okay, well, let's fix that spot. No need to look anywhere else. And then I was like, oh crap, there's still more mold. Find the next spot. Find the next spot. And I almost wish I had just said, Tim, come in and air sample every room, even if you don't see it, because I need to know.
The ERMI testing that I was telling you about. So that would be something where you could do, it's an investment up front, but it'll give us accurate measurements of like the different sections of your house, how much mold is there.
Yeah, it took me 2 years to do the ERMIs he asked me to do.
And that's something too with real estate is like, okay, you go in first, look around, bring your flashlight, rule out any egregious stuff. If you just find water damage, first of all, if you're buying a house that was built in 1952, maybe don't. Second of all,
that's a really great tip.
Yeah, right. So, and because we have plenty of people that do that. They call us up. I've got this house. We Google it. We're like, oh, this thing was built in 1952. Probably not the best house for you.
Right. Why that
maybe keep looking.
Year?
I just did an example.
Okay.
Like I said, anything older than like say 10 years is like, well, you're just gonna have more moisture history. It's like it just the older it is, the more average moisture history there's gonna be. And so when it's like you get somebody that's, let's say, referred to us by an integrative physician, they've gotten better, we've helped them with their house, and they're like, hey, we're looking for a new house. And we really love this house, and this is the address, and let's sign up for an assessment. And we Google it, and it's like it was built way back when. We're like, and it's got a crawl space. A lot of those older houses, better built houses back then, but they had crawl spaces, which are not good. Mm-hmm. So we'll tell them like, hey, we really don't recommend a house like this for somebody that's sensitive to mold.
Wow.
No environment.
So if someone does have to rent and they have no choice, and
asking for a friend again.
Well, we just have a lot of patients like this where they're stuck, and so if they're stuck in a place and we're trying, what are some things that they can do? What's the best air purifier? What are some tips that they can do until they can get out of that space?
So air purifiers are good. We like Austin Air. To me, the Austin Air is the best bang for the buck. So you have medical grade HEPA, you've got carbon filtration for the VOCs, the chemicals, and they don't have a bunch of bells and whistles. So a lot of these air purifiers, they have like ionizers and particle counters. So like when you have an air purifier that's got like green, yellow, red, it's a particle counter in there. You don't need any of that. So Austin Air, they're expensive on the front end, but the filter is rated for 5 years. And you can just leave them running all the time. So I have them in all of my bedrooms, and that just really helps just pull a lot of that particulate out of the air.
Are they here in Austin?
No, it's actually out of Buffalo, New York. So ironically, yeah. But the other thing you can do on a budget is build a I'm blanking on it. The box where you buy HEPA filters and you tape them together in a cube, and then you tape a fan on the Corsi Rosenthal box. So
say more. What?
Yeah.
So Corsi like Rosenthal, it's like CORSI, and you build your own filter. So with a box fan, and then you tape filters together, and you build this cube, and that on a budget, for I don't know, $100, you can build purifiers. And
my wife would murder me if I put this in the corner of our.
But in a pinch, right? In a pinch, you can build. And see, the beauty is you could build like 5 or 6 of those.
That's awesome.
And that can make a difference, right?
Yeah.
So filtration and just ventilation, right? Bringing in fresh air, bringing down humidity, right? Getting a dehumidifier. So that, as far as, you can seal off mold. So we tell people, if you see visible mold, or you think that there's mold, like there's water damage, seal that off in plastic. So those air pathways that are allowing the mold to get into the breathing zone, seal that off. So we
would usually tell someone that would be pointless, but it does actually work.
Just so like if you've got
limiting, it doesn't obviously nullify it.
Yeah,
reduces the transmission into the air.
Theoretically, you could seal off a source of mold from getting into the air if as long as you can shut down all of those air pathways. That's a Band-Aid, right? Right.
It
you want to get rid of the mold, right? But you can prevent it from, so that's a temporary solution, right? In an apartment, or if somebody calls us up and they're like, we need an assessment right now. Like, we think we've got mold. We can see some mold. We say, put some, carefully put some plastic over it, painter's tape, like seal that off for now.
Sorry, Paige. We should have done that in your office.
Stay out of that room.
2 years ago.
Yeah,
you really care about me. Just kidding. No, this is great, especially for these like rentals. I'm like thinking about, that for a lot of people in the like median time of them trying to figure out a place to go. So
okay, we got 4 minutes, Paige.
I have so many
we're gonna have to get Tim back.
Tim, you have to come back.
I'll come back.
Okay.
Come back.
Okay,
I love
good.
it.
I do have a fun question.
Yes.
I won't do any more talking. It's all you, Paige.
Okay.
I'll try.
Anyway,
I'm not promising.
what is the most common mold myth you wish would die?
Ooh, on the spot.
I love this question because I know you probably get a lot of misinformation.
There's a few. That whole idea.
He's like, I've got more than one.
Which one do you want?
That whole idea of like, come test my house for mold. It's like,
right.
There's not just this one test that you do that it's like so much more than that. So that's one. I would say the other big one is that there are, is it the bad type of mold, right? The black mold. We hear about black mold, which Stachybotrys was in the news years ago, and that became the deadly black mold. But it's like, there's so many other kinds of mold that are toxic, and really, there's never a time that we find mold. If mold is growing in a house because there's been water damage, we never are like, well, it's the
it's
mold,
the good mold,
and leave it. It's fine. It's like, if there's mold, first of all, you're only testing for so many different things, and anytime there's moisture and their food source, there's all kinds of different microbes and organisms trying to reproduce and battle each other. So when you're testing, you're only getting like a kind of a slice of what's actually there. So it's like, if there's water damage and organisms growing on it in your house where it's not supposed to be, get rid of it. There's no such, is it the bad mold? No, no mold is good.
Correct. Even the CDC says so.
Right. And it's like, oh, this mold isn't, known to cause, harmful, whatever. Like,
yet.
Give them more time to research, and they'll figure out that it's doing this or that, right? And then, not to mention, like, there's probably bacteria in that area, or yeast or candida or whatever it is. So it's like you want to address those things.
Organisms.
Organisms,
the creepy crawlies,
all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of stuff. So whenever you have water. Stuff grows. Water is life.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
All right, Paige, 2 minutes.
No,
90 seconds.
This has been incredible.
Yeah.
I have so many different thoughts on mold now. I feel more educated, and I feel empowered to help our patients too, because I feel kind of helpless when they're like, oh, like, I keep finding mold. Like, is this ever going to end? Is there ever a place that we can go? And hopefully we can just share more truth about that. And
yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of stuff that we can help them with. a lot of stuff they can do on their own. I think knowledge is power. That's one of the things we're always trying to educate our clients and teach them about what's really going on, so they're not so dang confused by all of this. But also, you know, and when they hire us, it's an investment, right? It's like, we're not the cheap guys. You are going to spend some money, but we feel like it will be worth it on the back end, like saving you money.
You don't feel like it. You are, Tim.
Well, thank you.
No,
And the money that you'll save on remediation, because they're going to remediate in the right spots. And then also on the medical side, right? It's like, you can actually detox now. You're not being exposed.
Yeah. Not only you're going to feel better, you're not going to have that. I mean, mold causes cancer and heart attacks and dementia and everything, you name it.
Right.
So it's not just an investment in your home. It's an investment in your future health. Even if you don't feel bad now, give it time. It will get you somehow.
And the last thing I'll say too is, we take a practical approach, because I know a lot of people feel like, oh, I've got to, if I'm sensitive to mold, then I've got to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to do all the fancy stuff. You know, I've got to spend $30,000 on small particle cleaning, and I've got to hire this remediator, you know, from California to fly out, because he's the you know, it's like, no. So we kind of help you understand, like, where the the points of diminishing return are, and like where the best bang for your buck is, so that we can put a remediation plan together for you that for your budget will give you the best bang for your buck and make the biggest difference.
Yeah. How do you get the 90% out? The 10% could cost many more thousands.
Exactly.
Let's get the 90%.
Exactly.
Let's get the home healthy enough to heal in.
You said it.
Healthy enough to heal it. Well, Tim, this was fascinating.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is awesome.
More questions.
Just a few.
No, we do.
This is part one.
Part one.
Yes.
I think this
of
spawned
100.
many more questions.
I'm going to be a regular guest.
Yes. This is awesome.
So thank you, Tim. Tell people one more time where they can find you.
So Airwell, Texas, Texas at airwellnow.com, 512-766-2180. Airwellnow.com is the website.
Good. And of course, we'll put that in the description and stuff. So Tim, thank you so much. Thank you for helping my home get healthier.
Yeah.
And thanks for answering all the questions. So
yeah, happy to do it. Thank you, guys.
We'll see you soon.